Now I know that the martial arts assassin is pending, but I'll be damned if I didn't try this build, which is absolutely mind-blowing. You know I had to do it. Welcome to the mini playthrough of the Mind Blast Assassin.
They'll never see me coming.
Now we start off martial arting. Obviously most characters start out with melee, but it is no sweat for this girl because she's naturally good at it and gets to level 2 very quickly. Once you do get to level 2, you get to put a point into the very peculiar skill of Psychic Hammer. Yeah, so don't feel bad if you've never used this in vanilla D2 because it works like telekinesis from the sorceress, only it damages not one but 2 monsters close by and it does magic damage. Oh yeah, and the mod makes it so that its damage isn't, 2. That's good because I will be putting points into it till level 5 as Mind Blast is obviously a level 18 skill now. Thus we will be crushing minds and knocking back zombies till then with hammers that are not blessed. Boy has this mod changed a lot. In the time that we do actually get to Mind Blast, I decided to give a visit to Bloodraven, which turned out to be a terrible idea. Seriously, does Senpai something have a crush on Bloodraven because she is absolutely goated as hell? I mean look at this, she hits like bloody Diablo, and I'm not even exaggerating here. Oh well, back to the stony field I guess to kill Rakanishu, then to get to level 6 in the underground. Here I put a point into Burst of Speed, which is a skill that has been nerfed, understandably on the attack speed side, questionably on the run walk side. This level, however, also crucially allows me to use gas potions and strangle this hoe to her death. Again, despite the annoyances of the Bloodraven quest, I still wanted to complete it because I would love to use an Act 1 Mercenary throughout this playthrough because they've been given some nicer auras that activate at around level 18. That would take a little bit of time to get to, so let us do some Countess runs in the meanwhile to get some runes and also kill boss packs that often spawn in the Forgotten Tower.
Oh, who would want to remember this place?
Also yes, the assassin does have some of the best dialogue in the game. Another nice thing about her is that she only needs 1 rune word to be farmed from the normal Countess. No points for guessing which one. Even with the nerf, stealth is really excellent for faster run walk to boost up the little bit that you get from burst of speed, and also faster hit recovery always helps. FCR I'll get to later, but the 6 dex is nice, and the poison rest I'll get to later. For now, while talking about runes, I gotta talk about the rals I picked up because these will be great for fire resistance going into acts 3 and 4. Or maybe even cube up to make like a Zephyr bow for even more faster run walk. The unfortunate thing about that idea is that this is the one assassin build that actually uses FCR over increased attack speed. Thus you can see some rudimentary FCR gear that I have kept around. Stealth is one of them as well, as you may have guessed, and that was the point I skipped on before. Another point I skipped on was the importance of poison rest, which is seen in the Endorial fight. Not that I was level 17 to put on stealth by this point, but the magic damage I was doing was still pretty good. The problem with this skill here is honestly aiming. I know that sounds silly, play the clip.
But you also have to aim, and I really hate to aim abilities in Diablo 2 or any RPGs, because then you just kind of, oh, there's the mob, then you kind of have to do so much focus with the aiming, which is annoying.
Alright, did I understand that correctly?
But with skills like Bone Spear or even arrows with the Zon, your skills are actually chunky. Here you really have to pinpoint focus on the monster itself, which is often moving. Plus it can be hindered by obstacles like these pillars and torches and catacombs 4. Good thing I guess that it just does a bunch of damage to make up for it. That's why going into Act 2 I put my skill points into it. That was until level 18. Here I got a point into my main skill, Mind Blast. Now this has really good synergy with Psychic Hammer because it does physical damage and the latter does magic damage. the combination of which can literally kill any monster in the game. Well, most monsters. Thus, I'm expecting hell to be a breeze with this chick. For now, Mind Blast is a little too weak and Psychic Hammer is also starting to fall behind as shown by this summoner fight. The area of effect with Psychic Hammer was always lacking, and thus going forwards, I will be putting all my points into Mind Blast and switch to it full time when it overtakes hammers in damage. I will not be switching to it by the time I get to Duriel though. Psychic Hammer will have to carry here. Thankfully it does. I guess more than that, the Assassin's HP pool carries. For a summoning character, the Assassin has an absurdly large HP pool, and you really get to appreciate it in this fight as I am able to tank Duriel for a while before getting away and setting up my attacks again. Of course I am stuffed with thawing potions, those are a given to raise my cold res against his attacks, but still, the tankiness of this Sin is quite underrated and you get to really appreciate it here. An appreciable thing that Duriel did was drop me a unique scale mail after dying, this of course being Hawk Mail. As you can see as well, this thing rolled Ethereal, which actually isn't the worst thing because I was planning to use it on a Mercenary anyways, since I would like to focus on FCR and plus skills on my own armor. That is so that I can get my damage up and start using Mind Blast, which is still not strong enough, unfortunately. What is strong though is the fact that my Mercenary finally hit level 18 here and activated her Vigor aura, and I don't know about you, but that faster run walk is doing things to me. Now this is how I'm used to moving with the Assassin. For damage, I will do the obvious. Stay a while and farm at Serena Temple till level 24. The Sin didn't get a level 18 teleport skill, probably because she's always had a dragonflight, but instead I'll just use a teleport staff with her, so I'll get up to level 24. Kinda perfect really that just before I went to do my leveling spree, I found this drop. The unique Gull Dagger with 100% magic find. Now with 20% more deadly strike as well. I actually would not mind using this as my main weapon for the moment, since I don't really think that I'm spamming my attacks per se, and thus not really using that faster FCR breakpoint. I may need it when I switch to Mind Blast though, as I found out while farming Serena. Now this skill actually does less damage than Psychic Hammer even still, even though I have been hammering skill points into it. The reason that I was using it here, however, is just because of its much better AoE. However, once I got out of here and at level 24, I got to Trav, I reverted back to using Psychic Hammers, just because of the greater damage output. This damage output really helps against single targets like Mephisto as well. Now he is of course scary, he's actually supposed to be the scariest brother in the lore as well. Don't double check that, I may have made that up. But still, your res is like 20 when you get to him, since you don't have Ancient's Pledge yet, and thus his lightning attack, frozen orb and charged bolt hurt a lot. Both you and your Mercenary. Looking at this fight, I honestly just thought to myself that it was probably better to max Psychic Hammer in normal first, since it is what I've ended up using anyways. I mean, hindsight is 2020. However, Akara does give us a chance to act upon it by giving us a respec in normal, which I used to max Psychic Hammer and not put points into Mind Blast. I say that and then I put a point into its prerequisite. We'll just assume that that didn't happen because what I really wanted to do was get a point into my friend here, the Shadow Warrior. What this allows me to do is summon a meat shield for fights like Isuel. It's really helpful for this one since Izzy can freeze and being frozen slows down your casts in PD2. Thus with my friend here I can reap the benefits of having something that will charge at the enemies and take attention away from me, quite akin to an Act 2 Mercenary, while having an Act 1 Mercenary as well with added damage and that nice Vigor aura. Well, one drawback of the Act 1 Mercenary is that getting her some crushing blow is going to be a little bit challenging because she can't really wield a strength now, can she? Thus, just to rub it in, you know the game had to give me an Am rune at the normal Hellforge as well. Cool video game. I'll have to figure out what I do with it when I get to level 26. For now though, I was chilling with my 2 girls in the chaos. Chilling is the correct verb as well, as this CS was no problem for my sim. You can see the strat for Infector worked really well, just using the Shadow Warrior as a close summoned meat shield. Similar was the story for the Decisive pack as well. These Necros fall easy to magic damage as well, probably because of their lower HP. Grand Vizier's pack actually was the toughest one because they do take a while to kill. Thus, I just isolated the boss out himself and popped the seal to clean up the rest. Then we had Diablo, and yup, he just swiped my 2 besties with just 1 attack. That's Diablo alright. Fighting Izzy and getting those 2 extra skill points really helped here, as it took my psychic hammer damage from 200 to 250, and it shows. One thing that you can see in this fight again is what I was talking about against Andariel as well, where with some other skills like Exploding Arrow / Bone Spear, I would have probably just gone off screen almost and still have been able to hit Diablo. Not here. Here I did have to be a bit uncomfortably close to the flaming hot lizard. Thankfully the assassin is nimble enough to get out of the way of his devastating attacks and brings him down, and does it in style, because get ready, what follows is the best dialogue in the entire game. Say it, assassin.
A hero's mistake is finally corrected.
God, I love that dialogue. One thing that I'm really impressed by in Act 5 is the tankiness of the Shadow Warrior, which she displayed against Frozenstein. I mean, look at that. She made them look like a bunch of chumps, took like no damage at all, as I was able to sit back and take care of them. The real test of her tankiness, however, is the Ancients fight. Here I decided to target pesky Madoc first, because nobody likes Madoc. I mean, look at him with his stupid orange outfit, and ow, damn, he hurts. I had to move around a bit and dodge his attacks, but since he has low HP compared to his brethren, I was able to get him out of there in short order. The Shadow Warrior though is showing her tanking capability here too, as she held off the other 2 in the meantime. I mean, you can see where she gets it from, right? The assassin is no slouch either. She has a massive HP pool and the ability to block from both weapon and shield, and thus I can stand toe to toe with foes like Korlik or Talik and take them out using Psychic Hammer. The magic damage here was, well, it wasn't anything to write home about, but given that this is literally a level 1 skill, it does pretty well for itself. That's actually putting it rather softly, since with it I was able to dispatch of the Lister pack as well. Now yes, the defensive capabilities help. You can see how much the knockback affects this fight, and of course, this wouldn't have been nearly this easy if the Shadow Warrior wouldn't have been so good, but the damage from Psychic Hammers does pretty well too. Again, nothing too special as we move on to the Bale fight, but satisfactory. It is not a bad single target killer by any means. In this fight too, the Shadow Warrior plays a huge role. Not only is Bale going to be generally annoying to deal with without her, but his cold-shaped re-attacks would have been major bad news, since that would have slowed down my attacks as well. Thankfully, for the couple times he did get me, I had thawing potions to deal with it, and for the rest of the while I had the Shadow Warrior to distract him while I blew him using my brains. That sounded really wrong. What wasn't wrong or bad, I guess, were the drops, because he dropped me unique light gauntlets, which are a pretty sweet find since the 20 FCR from the Mage Fists will help me in reaching higher FCR breakpoints. The +1 to fire skills will go to waste unfortunately, as I found out while double checking my build. While doing that, I completely forgot about this other drop I got too. Millebrega's shield, which has been super buffed to roll with up to 60 magic find, making it the ultimate swap option for MF characters. Mine only rolled with 33, but still, with the 100 from the Gull, I expect this to be putting in some work going forwards. That run of luck with items continued, as in the Black Marsh of Act 1 Nightmare I found a composite bow from a crow boss pack I killed, that of course being Rogue's Bow. Obviously this is a mercenary based item, but it has some cool stats on it, so it's decent I guess. The next drop was much better though, very good indeed. The unique Demon Hide armor from Rakinishu, which is the skin of the flayed one. See, that right there is the Gull Dagger putting in work. This is a pretty nice armor as well now, since it has buffed lifesteal of up to 7% and a max roll of 45 fire res as well, which I got some pretty decent roll as well. Again, this is going to be a mercenary armor because the Act 1 mercenary from Nightmare is really just not cutting it at the moment. Anywho, thankfully from my first Countess run, I actually got some pretty decent runes as well, thus making my time here a lot easier. In that time I made the following rune words, starting with my weapon we have Spirit. Now I know that that's a bit of a boring choice, but it really is not my fault that this weapon is so crazy good that it offers +1 to skills, FCR, FHR, life, mana and some magic absorb, because why not? The FCR situation is weird really because the roll on it doesn't matter unless it's a perfect 35 FCR one. Other than that, anything else is pretty much equivalent to the one that I got, which is the worst roll, aka 25 FCR. Like I said though, this is still enough for me to get to the 65 FCR breakpoint with Mind Blast, which really feels like butter. The reason 35 FCR would have made a difference really is because I would have been able to reach that same FCR breakpoint but also take off my current gloves, Mage Fists. Now these are perfectly serviceable, but they don't really serve any other purpose than providing me with 10 additional FCR to get to the breakpoint. That honestly is still pretty good, and I don't want to sound ungrateful or anything, but if I were to get my FCR from anywhere else, these could have been replaced by like +1 to Shadow Discipline gloves. Pretty sure you can buy those from Charcy, or like any gloves with resistances. For now the rest of my FCR comes from stealth. Of course, since I haven't found any exceptional armor like Viper Magi, Spirit Shroud or, well, a Lem rune, there is nothing that can dethrone this thing as being the most used item on any of my characters. For the final two pieces of the puzzle, I have 2 FCR rings to get me to the 65 total. Again, these are nothing special, both have 7 res, one with cold and other with fire, so it is something, I guess. However, they can be much improved. This fire one especially, it had high roll potential as well, but you get what you get and you don't get upset. The theme is true for my lower armor as well, aka my belt and boots. They're generic Charcy sales. The Demon Hide sash isn't terrible per se, it has 17 FHR getting me to the 48 breakpoint and also 14 lightning res. It's not a lot, but something is better than nothing, right? My boots are glorious! Heavy boots of speed, that's a fancy way of saying that they have 30 faster run walk. To be fair, at this stage this is as good as it gets, so I can't really complain much here. What I can't complain about at all is my shield, which is Rhyme. I'm a huge fan of this rune word, both in LOD and here as well, for its 25 res contribution plus cannot be frozen and 25 MF on top as well. But Chinmay, why this and not Ancient's Pledge? Well, because freezes slow down casts as well in this mod, thus cannot be frozen is pretty essential going forwards for this girl. Also, being an assassin, running fast is a major trait of her, and this protects that run walk as well. It does mean giving up on resistances from Ancient's Pledge however, thus to compensate for that we have this little guy, a rainbow amulet with 9 all res. Now if I would have been a good boy and collected all flawless gems that were thrown my way, I probably could have cubed up to a prismatic amulet, which is the obvious upgrade to this one, but I have been lazy and thus this will do for now. Finally we have lore. Honestly, super good. This girl benefits a lot from plus skills, and the +1 from this and spirit do add a lot of damage. Also, this adds 30 lightning res. Both additions you'll see reflected in the stat screen. Now, as mentioned, the damage is good, as you can see. It is touching 600 physical damage with Mind Blast. With 65 FCR, she does destroy at the moment. On the defensive side, my life is 669, nice. My res it's alright. Fire is definitely low. 21 is not where you want this to be sitting since fire damage is just too prominent. However, the rest do look pretty good. Of course, these res figures can be increased by the skill Fade, but I have chosen not to invest in it at the moment since I'm going for Burst of Speed. Again, it's not like this is a hardcore character or that I'm even capable of playing hardcore in the first place, so investing in Fade and Nightmare just seemed overly cautious, and thus I went with Burst of Speed to enjoy that nerfed faster run walk for a little while longer. For my main damaging skill, we have Mind Blast. And still, it is wild to think that this is my main damaging skill, but here we are, actually doing a Shadow Disciplines Assassin. It's good as well, as I mentioned, as this does really good physical damage at the moment. Compared to Lord of Destruction, the stun and conversion seem to have been eliminated completely, but there does seem to be a little bit of knockback element, similar to Psychic Hammer. The benefit over Psychic Hammer is the much larger area of effect, which I'll show you once in battle. First, I had to make the decision of which skill to invest in once I had maxed this thing. Since it has 3 equivalent synergies in Cloak of Shadows, Psychic Hammer, and Shadow Warrior, I decided to go with the latest. I mentioned this in normal already, but I really like this skill. If you watched my Bows on mini playthrough last year, you'd know that I love meat shields, as in it I spent like 90% of that playthrough just raving about Valkyrie. This girl is quite similar in that she's very tanky, having double my HP, and thus I can play aggressively and summon her in the midst of a boss pack, whereas me and my Mercenary can sit back and kill from a range. It works really well. Option 2 for synergies would have been Psychic Hammer. The benefit with this skill would have been just providing me with another form of damage in magic, thus making the stone skin or naturally physically resistant monsters a bit easier. That's a pretty fringe case as you can guess, and thus I'll max this after Shadow Warrior. That really is the build and the beauty of this assassin. For more beauty, we turn to my Mercenary because as promised I'm sticking with an Act 1 Merc and I'm quite enjoying it at the moment. She's a Vigor or a Mercenary. Some people may choose Meditation, but I just enjoy that faster run walk too damn much. In terms of damage, she actually has some alright items. Starting with her bow, I built her an Edge. This is a pretty underrated bow honestly for how good the stats are on this thing. Level 15 Thorns Aura to damage back melee attackers, 35 IAS, around 400% damage to demons and 300% damage to undead, so this bow actually does do a lot more damage than it shows. Plus it has poison damage, life steal, and prevent monster heal to round things up. All for a tier Tal Am. The only thing it is really missing is what we're used to seeing from that Am tier combo, Crushing Blow. For that I went with the obvious solution of some blood gloves. Yeah, it is only 5% Crushing Blow, which is further nerfed, I'm pretty sure, on missile weapons, but it is something, right? Plus, these give more lifesteal and life as well. Speaking of lifesteal, yeah, how much lifesteal does my Mercenary have? The answer is yes. The rest of her gear is really nothing special, just some rudimentary stuff to help her cold and lightning res since Skin of the Flayed One takes care of fire by itself. Finally, with all that talk, how does she play? Well, is fast an option? Because that is an accurate representation of her. She moves fast, she kills fast, and Ariel does slow things down, but in this fight you can really see the beauty of having that Shadow Warrior. Me and my Mercenary have literally nothing to worry about because she face tanks so much of the damage. In terms of actually doing damage, Mind Blast does a good job here, and so does the Mercenary with her occasional fire arrows, which I guess I didn't even mention, I just called her the Vigor Aura Mercenary, but yeah, There you go, she fires fire arrows. Combine that with the physical damage of Mind Blast, me and my mercenary were able to get Andy out of there before she was able to drain the 1.5k hit points that my Shadow Warrior has. Act 2 was pretty standard fare, except that I found a white sharkskin belt in Radaman's lair. Ooh, I know, exciting, right? Well, it was for me, because at this stage I felt that this was going to be my best imbue option, and boy was I wrong. Charcy, you really did me dirty on this one. The Worldstone Shard managed to save it a little bit, and thus I'll take it, mainly for the fire res, since I'll need it as much as I can muster going into Act 3. Well, we have to go through Duriel first. Here too, the absolute hero of the story was the Shadow Warrior. One Shadow Warrior was literally all it took to distract Duriel for all of eternity for me and my mercenary to do the work. And just to prove that she also does do the work, I let the mercenary take over for a little while in the fight. You know, it's not summon necro revived ogres good, but it is still pretty solid, and combined with the powers of my assassin's mind, it more than easily gets the job done. Also, I keep forgetting to put the Gull Dagger in my offhand for boss fights. Not that any unique here would have helped, but still, gotta remember that for the future. Well, the drops at Duriel were pretty poo, but that's where our friends over at the Spider Cavern made up, as they gave me a double set drop when I killed Sark and his boys. The first one was some set heavy gloves. For an assassin using attack speed, these would have been pretty good, but unfortunately these sanders serve no purpose for my sin. These rite of passage though, have they like doubled their drop rate or something? Because I found them last time too with very little MF. I'm not going to complain, however. A free source of Cannot Be Frozen is always welcome, even though I don't really need another one at the moment. Now the Flare dungeon is a mixed bag for the assassin. On one hand, she deals with the flares very well since she can effectively one-shot them with Mind Blast. Then we have ghosts. Now, she can clear these boss packs too, just the problem arises with packs like these, for instance, ones with mods like Stone Skin making them physical immune. Thus the mercenary gets to show off here a little bit again while I wait doing nothing because I apparently just forgot that psychic hammers exist. Brilliant. Other than that, she did shred through Act 3. The next problematic group of monsters were really these broomstick men, since they are undead monsters and thus resistant to physical attacks. But there's also very strong fire damage coming from their side, so dealing with them is not the easiest given my fire res is about 25. After they're down, however, Mephisto is quite a similar story to the other bosses actually. The only difference here is that he actually was able to KO one of my Shadow Warriors. I mean, it is no big deal, I can just resummon one in the blink of an eye, but it does speak to Mephisto's power compared to Andy and Duriel. Also, unlike those two bosses, here I finally remembered to put my Magic Find swap on while killing Mephisto, and boy did that pay out. Unique Greater Talons. I couldn't have written it any better than that. Before we look at those though, a council member also dropped a unique large siege bow while I was luring out Mephisto, this being the Cliff Killer. Another one for the man. I hope this would wait a mini playthrough for my bows on next, but hey, it's still good for the mercenary counter. Really, my girl looks pretty decked out with this weapon on her, so that's lovely. My assassin is about to get decked out too. The Bartuks will make me wait a bit since I need both strength and dexterity. However, the +2 to assassin skills and FHR and stat bonuses will be worth it. I hope. Yeah, they will be. More good items dropped in Act 4 as this Pit Lord pack in the Plains of Despair dropped me a Duriel shell. I already have my source of Cannot Be Frozen, however, in the omnipresent Rite of Passage, and thus this will be a mercenary armor of choice going forwards. Maybe. We'll see. For now, I brought you here to show you the most ruthless enemy you'll face as this assassin. No, not Israel. I'm talking about the Burning Soul. Rather, Burning Souls, since these guys often attack in packs and they are very bad for this sin because they do a lot of damage to you and your mercenary, often at the same time. Plus, they're also undead and thus resistant to your attacks, and also have a mana burn element attached, which is just annoying at first glance, but it can be detrimental if left unchecked. Other than that, this assassin actually had a pretty swell time in Act 4, including the chaos. That's because most of it was filled with these Necromages, and since they have low HP stats, they're a clean 2-hit KO with Mind Blast. This boss pack also happened to drop me a unique amulet upon dying. I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't even sure what to ask for at this stage, but what I got was a pretty basic Nokuzin. It's not bad, is it? This amulet is never bad, just a solid defensive find with FHR and fire res, and my Shadow Warrior is dying. Okay, gotta go, bye bye. With that fire res, however, you would think that I would be comfy taking on Infector. Yeah, but I was comfy anyways, since the plan with killing any one pack with this girl is always to let the Shadow Warrior take the hits while you blast them from a screen away. In the case of Decise, the first part didn't even happen because the mages just toppled under my power. Also, the defensive ability of Mind Blast adding a wee bit of knockback you just saw come in handy there. With that, I also finished off the floaty ghost thing, and then it was time for the big red lizard one next. The plan with him was to let the warrior take the hits, but boy are his hits powerful. I mean, with the other bosses I found out how tanky the Shadow Warrior was. Here I found out that the skill Shadow Warrior has a massive cooldown because I had to resummon her so often. That's saying something, isn't it? That's acceptable from him though, since he is the name of the game, and though he hurts, he does go down eventually. What isn't acceptable is me forgetting my MF swap again. To be fair, there's nothing good here. Nothing but that dialogue.
A hero's mistake is finally corrected.
God, that's good. We end Act 4 with an incredibly satisfying sound, and we enter Act 5 with an incredibly satisfying sight. The Shadow Warrior kicking down a poison door off clean. Had to include that. In terms of actual highlights, there were souls again. These are not too bad a couple at a time, just a nuisance in a pack like this. This one especially, since it was physically immune, thus giving me a chance to offer my Psychic Hammer sales pitch. If you're not satisfied yet though, don't worry, because the Ancients gave me another opportunity at this. Here Talik was physically immune and Korlik was cursed. Pretty much the two worst stat rolls I could have foreseen, but I fought them anyways, out of laziness mostly. Because of this, Maddock did hurt a lot. Amp damage plus double throw is quite deadly, as you can see, and thus I had to focus fire on him first. Then after he was down, things could calm down a bit since my Shadow Warrior was not dying every 2 seconds. With her in place, I could damage Korlik. Talik also was in range of the Mind Blasts, but being physically immune, he obviously took no damage from it. That's no problem, however. For him, I just had to get in position. Just give me a second here. Have to make sure that there are no blockages in between us. And we're back with continuous damage to him, which is not too shabby. He did try to hit back, of course, but without amp damage, his damage really was lackluster, and I was able to dispose of him really the easiest. Speaking of easy, the Lister pack in Nightmare. Now yes, I am damaging him, pretty much sitting off screen, but hey man, hate the message, not the messenger. That's the strat, and it works so goddamn well. Can you blame me for using it? Well, yes you can, and if you are, then get ready because the same continues in the Bale fight as well. Again, even though I cannot be frozen, I don't want to be near the Omni Tentacle Man, mainly in fear of his mana burn attacks slowing things down. With me standing away, I can damage him again as long as there are no obstructions like these pillars in the throne room in between us. Finally, after a bit of dodging and weaving past those, I did remember to put on my magic find switch while killing Bale, and I shall be continuing to do so in the MF runs going forwards. For now, I got a set cuirass from him, which was this thing. It's actually alright, reminds me of Quay Hagen's wisdom with +1 to skills and a bunch of straight life bonus. Also with this, you can see the difference plus skills make on this girl. My damage literally jumped by 200 with just +1, and thus with that, I can safely say, Stealth, we have found you a worthy successor. I found many other successes as well, and I'm here to show them to you. First, let us start with my weapon, which is Bartuk's Cut Throat, succeeding my Spirit Sword. You watched me find this at Nightmare Mephisto, and it's awesome. It provides me with +2 to skills, 1 additional than Spirit, some nice FHR as a bonus, and 20 dexterity and strength as well, which has really allowed me to wield whatever gear I want without thinking about requirements too much. The one thing this weapon is missing is the FCR from Spirit, and since I wanted to stay at the 65 FCR breakpoint, I compensated by switching my shield to a Splendor. Ethlum in a Kite shield yields me +1 to skills, 20 to 35 FCR, and some MF as well. This shield has been buffed in FCR since in LOD it only offers 10, and it's kinda lame. While here, it really solves my problem without me having to invest 156 strength points for a spirit shield in a Monarch. Thus, as a result, it does lack resistances, but my skills cover that. Speaking of skills, my armor also provides +1 to skills with 85 to life, this green one that I found before and I still cannot pronounce. Now I thought about going treachery with this girl, but I didn't, mainly due to 3 reasons. 1, this is different. I used Tretch on my last assassin, my last Amazon, my last paladin, probably my last barbarian too. This is a bit of a different approach. Number 2, treachery has been nerfed with it offering chance to cast lesser fade now, which is honestly more of a nuisance than anything else. I'll touch on that a bit later. Number 3, and finally, I just couldn't find a Lem rune for the life of me. I mean, I farmed Hell Countess till level 78, but it was just not happening, so I decided to stick with this. Also yes, I know my res looks horrendous, please bear with me for a while. I do lose out on 1 skill point from that armor. To make up for that, we have my amulet, which gives +3 to Shadow Discipline skills. This is huge. I know it looks like a tiny little thing, but if you take a look at my stat page again, ignoring my resistances, thank you very much, in the damage section you can see the impact of the plus skills on this girl. 1k damage flat. That's a number. Thus, it would not surprise you that for my helmet I went for a similar approach. This thing is pretty much a super juiced version of lore, as you can see. +3 to Shadow Discipline skills, aka all my assassin skills, and 2 open sockets so I could throw 2 Ort runes in there to help my lightning res. Again, we're not talking about that yet. You can see that I corrupted this Great Helm as well with +6 to max life. That is because this was easy enough to re-obtain if I bricked it, since I bought this off of Hell Charcy. She sells 2 types of skills on helms. Barbarian combat skills, and of course these ones, so that was an awesome discovery. Taking a break from the awesome, let's talk about some mediocre stuff, and for that we'll focus on my rings first. These are not great. Getting FCR rings with res is not the hardest thing, but I just have not been able to get the RNG this time round. Got this one however with faster run walk, which is quite neat, and the other one is just +7 to strength, just so that it doesn't look stupid with no additional stats, even though it doesn't actually do anything for me. My boots are the same, Rite of Passage. Gotta have these for the Cannot Be Frozen, but the 30 faster run walk and lightning res I corrupted on these is much appreciated as well. Gloves are Mage Fists. I did not gamble on corrupts with these because they are a very essential piece of the puzzle for my girl to reach the 65 FCR breakpoint, and thus I didn't want to mess with these beauties. What I'm realizing now, however, is that I could have messed with my belt, which is just still a standard Saigon's. Yes, it provides me 20 to life and some fire res, but those stats aren't super necessary, as George Masvidal would say, so you know what? Let's send it. And would you look at that? 13 lightning res. So if there is any lesson to be taken away from this, it is kids, gambling is good. Okay, with that I think you all have been eyeing at my res for far too long. Let me just fix them up for you. Okay, now, where were we? To be honest, they aren't even that good. I mean, fire and light is good at near max, but cold and poison are low. Something that can be fixed with potions, albeit nerfed ones, when needed. As you may guess, this transformation was thanks to my skills, which all reside in the Shadow Disciplines tree. The one we're looking at first is Fade. Now this has been nerfed. The DR on it has been halved clean, but thankfully the elemental resists are still solid. This brings us to the lesser Fade I was talking about before. That thing provides half of all the stats provided by this Fade, and that's honestly not that bad. Really, I would have been fine with 44 lightning and fire res too. The nail in the coffin about that skill is that its skill duration is literally 30 seconds. Thus you can imagine in regular play it would cost quite often, since its CTC has been increased to 33%, and once it runs out in half a minute, my assassin would pretty much be a sitting duck at negative resistances. Not to mention, it would always overwrite my current Fade proc, thus is my resistance towards the armor altogether. Next skill is support as well, and it is Shadow Warrior. In LOD, some people debate between this and the Master, but here it is the clear choice, since not only does it provide a perfectly apt meat shield with 2k plus life, but also acts as a synergy to my main damaging skill, Mind Blast. I guess I should say one of my main damaging skills, since I do use this in tandem with Psychic Hammer, but this provides 4000 physical damage. You will be surprised, however, to learn the amount of monsters that resist physical damage in Hell. That's where we have, well, not Cloak of Shadows. This I'm just dumping points into for synergy. I still don't know how to use this skill properly, to be honest. We'll leave it for the martial arts assassin in Diablo 2 Resurrected to figure that out. For now, I want to talk a little bit about Psychic Hammer, a level 1 skill that does 4000 damage. 4000 damage that very, very few monsters resist. That is a little bit insane, and this really is a regular part of my attack, as I use it on every stone skin / physically resistant monster. To help out with them, my Mercenary also has cold arrows, as I did finally change from fire to cold in Hell. That's because here I could make the rune word Harmony. This really is the best bow I have found for her till now anyways. Just helps that it allows me to get the best of both auras, vigor and meditation, for faster run walk and mana regeneration respectively. The other gear on her is focused on lifesteal for her survivability, and let me tell you, she survives just as well as any well-geared Act 2 mercenary that you would be used to. I was really impressed by her throughout magic finding, and through that I also found her a Duriel shell. Great armor with resistances and cannot be frozen, which helps her out a lot. That's not all I found for her, as her belt is a string of ears with a pretty sweet corrupt of 10 IAS. Kinda making this the melee version of Arachnid Smash. Sort of. Not really, but it's still very good with 7% lifesteal and 13 damage reduction rolls. The boots on her are just to buff her dexterity, as I needed that to put the bow on her for the moment. Now with the gear summary done then, let's move on to some action, and I want to show you 2 scenarios in Act 1 that prove what I just explained. First is this goat clan in jail level 3, which you wouldn't take as particularly physically resistant, However, with just one stone skin roll, it makes them physical immune. Thus, I have to deploy Psychic Hammer here, but you can see that it passes any test with flying colors. Something that doesn't are my resistances. In this next clip, you can see what I mean by my sin being vulnerable when Fade wears out. Yeah, imagine this happening every 30 seconds if lesser Fade overrode my normal one. Doesn't sound too much fun now, does it? Thankfully, we don't have to deal with that nonsense as of now in the Andorial fight. This fight can actually be pretty nicely described as that, a no-nonsense fight. This was textbook. Put the shadow down in front of the boss and sit back and attack while taking no damage. See, it is still effective in hell. Special shoutouts to Mind Blast AoE eliminating any pesky minions that would otherwise annoy me during the fight as well. The shadow just about survived the whole fight, but that is all I needed as she took down Andorial with her. Well, I took her down and my mercenary did, but you know what I mean. Listen to this dialogue too, by the way.
Death becomes you, Andariel.
So good. Our next highlight comes from the maggot boss at the end of the lair who was lightning enchanted, and thus the whole room during the fight lighted up like the festival of Diwali. If you're Indian, you got that reference. Otherwise, just picture a lot of lights and environmental pollution. Yeah, close enough. Rest of Act 2 was quite straightforward up to the Duriel fight. Here too, little things like feeding your mercenary thawing potions have been made easy since you can just slot thawing potions in your belt. The little things that make me happy. What also makes me happy is just how well my Sin handled Duriel. You know, amidst all this, it is easy to forget that this girl does 4k damage. That's 4 with 3 zeros after that. That's a lot. Just ask Duriel for reference. I mean, my mercenary was literally just positioning and getting settled for the fight, where in the meanwhile, my assassin had already finished him off. The Shadow also surviving his onslaught of melee attacks decently well. Act 3 only brings us better news for my Sin, as here the main foes that I have to deal with are flares and these little birdies, all of which I can one hit. Most of my characters walk through this place cautiously because the enemies are lightning immune and these crows can be vicious as well, as you saw there. However, my Sin can just walk through them, as long as she has Fade up. Yeah, just gotta remember that little detail. Kind of important, that. Well, you know what they say, after the night is darkest, there comes dawn, and somehow relating to that metaphor, after dying here I got a very nice surprise in the form of a unique ogre axe at the entry of the spider cavern. Too bad that I'm not using Act 2 mercenaries, otherwise I would have definitely been tempted to shale am this puppy and throw this on him. Pretty nice find for a mini playthrough still. The magic find on my Splendor actually kept on giving, as a few paces later at the Flare Jungle I found a unique Spired Helm. A great find no matter what it is, right? Oh, it's Whale of Steel. I mean, yeah, it's okay, I guess, with +1 to skills and resistances, but 192 strength requirement? Are you kidding me with that? I guess it has a new look. It has that going for it. God, why couldn't just this be Nightwings? Well, you can mope later, magic finding Chinmay. Right now it is mini playthrough time, and we're taking on Mephisto next. Now this fight was interesting. Well, the main thing here was that I was just trying way too hard to save my mercenary from Mephisto's dangerous attacks. As you can see, my mind blasts were absolutely tearing him apart. However, I did waste a lot of time recasting the Shadow Warrior because she kept dying. And that is what you expect at this stage of the game as well. For whatever it's worth, however, I did succeed in my quest and killed Mephisto while keeping Anor alive. If only I had my MF switch to get some sweet drops as well. Well, next time. I'm sure I'll remember next time. Now, one of the monsters that I believed was going to be the bane of my existence in Act 4 was going to be Souls. Thankfully, as you can see in this Izzy fight, that I did not have to deal with. Also in this fight you can see the full power of 4k physical damage on a monster that doesn't resist it. That's a lot, you know. Unfortunately, quite a lot of monsters do resist physical damage down in the River of Flame, and thus you'd see me use a combination of Psychic Hammers, magical damage with Mind Blast. Using that, I managed to find a unique burnt wand which I completely blanked on at the moment, forgetting that it is the quite excellent Suicide Branch. One of the only items that provides the high stat of 50 FCR along with +1 to skills and some resistances as well. Really good for the mid game and for most mini playthrough characters, not for this one though, since Bartuks are just too sweet to give up. Speaking of, just a couple of boss packs later I found another sweet character specific item, Ashuda's Temper. Now that's a GG find no matter what way you look at it. Now made even better with the mod, since not only does it offer up to +3 to sorcerer skills, out of which I got a bummer +2 roll, 10 to 20% fire and lightning damage, of which my rolls were quite abysmal too, but the new addition is negative enemy fire and lightning resistant, which is invaluable. I mean, this is the stat that makes Griffin's Eye the valuable commodity that it is, and the fact that I got a perfect -10 for lightning on this one, that's pretty sweet. Of course, I'm not gonna be using it on this girl since A, I'm not a sorceress, and B, all my damage is physical and magical. Thankfully, that is enough to get me through the CS pretty easily. Now the thing here is that almost all monsters here take good damage from Mind Blast, but take better damage from Psychic Hammers. Thus I used a combination of both, since Mind Blast does still offer better AoE and is better to deal with large groups. For concentrated fire against guys like Infected for example, I did turn to Psychic Hammer for magic damage. Using my shadow as a sacrificial lamb, which is as appropriate as a metaphor gets, I mean just look at her getting shredded, jeez. I positioned myself quite a ways away from the big bad mean monsters and Psychic Hammered them to their demise. For the Necromancers I did choose the Mind Blast route again. That was to deal with the large group that spawned here as well. Mind Blast is also superior defensively as well, offering better knockback on a larger range of area, and also, don't know if I've mentioned this, it still does 4k physical damage. The same was the case for Grand Vizier too. These guys are physically resistant too, to the point that I actually ran into a physically immune floaty dude in the CS previously, but the AoE from Mind Blast is just too good to pass up. Against Diablo, well, first of all, rip my Mercenary, but girl, if you're gonna stand in the way of a lightning hose like that, don't know what else you were expecting was going to happen to you. To be fair, he is incredibly strong and eats up my shadows for breakfast appetizers. Thus, I was constantly mobile while fighting him. Frankly, he was just not giving me a chance to settle down and focus on my attack. Thus, when I did get shots in between, I was peppering him with Mind Blast. I choose to use Mind Blast against bosses because A, it does more damage to bosses, and B, Psychic Hammer is weird and you can whiff attacks really easily when there's an obstacle between you and the boss, and the collision physics are super weird to understand. With Mind Blast, however, you get none of that, just pure unadulterated damage. Also yes, I did forget my MF switch again. Oops. Didn't forget to stay back after the kill for this sweet dialogue though.
A hero's mistake is finally corrected.
That makes up for it, done it? In Act 5, I found a bug in the Halls of Pain dungeons. I couldn't teleport. As you can see, I was trying to use the teleport staff in the open and it just was not working. This did lead to some unfortunate circumstances, as you might imagine. To be fair, I was also playing a little bit tilted here and that never ends well. Thus I went to fight Nilithak with a fresh mindset. The strat was straightforward. Use the shadow as bait for all his minions and then Mind Blast Nilithak away. This way none of his minions will die near me and I won't have to worry about them neither, and the whole fight went pretty smoothly. What I did have to worry about were my options, since this rare circlet turned out to be +2 to assassin skills. In the end, it really wasn't too much of a choice, since you gotta realize that all my skills are invested in the Shadow Disciplines tree. Thus, my current helm in essence provides me with +3 to assassin skills, and thus this is a cute find, just too little too late. Too late because we're about to end the game as we're going through the Ancients next. Now, I did reset their roles a couple of times and I ended up settling on this one. Now yes, it did feature a Talic with Fanaticism aura, which is not exactly the most inviting role, but compared to the Cursed and Stone Skin which I was presented with before, this was workable. I focused first on Madoc because he's a pesky little rat if left unchecked. If you deal with him, however, he isn't that much of a nuisance since his HP stat is quite low. Unfortunately, in that fight I did end up losing my Mercenary, but as you can see, it didn't matter too much. Really, at this point, all I use her for is the Vigor aura, and for these two, all I really needed was to set down the Shadow in the correct spot, get damage on them, ideally both at the same time, and that concluded a quite comfy Ancients fight overall. Not too surprising though, since, 4k damage. Alright, I'll mention it one last time as it completely wiped out all the waves in the throne as well. The only monsters that really troubled me in Worldstone at all were souls, but I straight reset if I saw them because they're way too OP. Lister ranks in the same contention, but the thing with his pack, especially here, since they were extra fast and thus extra scary, it is easy to bunch them together if you have a castable meat shield like the Shadow Warrior. Then dispatching them with your AoE move is quite chill. Really, the Shadow Warrior is sort of like the unsung hero of this mini playthrough. Even though I'm pretty sure I did sing her praises quite a bit, but just having like a Valkyrie with a Zon, a Bear with a Druid, Shadow with Assassin, or every monster you kill with the Necro, it just makes completing Hell defensively a lot easier and is definitely a good strat for hardcore. This playthrough was not hardcore, of course, but this does include another one of these. Hope you liked it. Let me know if there are any particular builds you want me to focus on next. I do have a couple in mind. Of course, I mentioned the Boazon a few times in this video, but I'm always open to suggestions. Other than that, I actually did remember to have my MF switch for this fight, by the way. Yeah, we can see how well that paid out. Oh, sweet! Sparkling Mail now offers lightning skill damage? That would be pretty nice for like a Charge Bolt / Nova Sorceress starting out. Anyways, why am I still here? Hope you find this content riveting. Yours truly, with love.